Hey Calvin, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, James? Yeah,
Hey, long time no see, man, and talk. Good to see
yeah. How old are you now?
you. 19.
Wow,
How about you?
wow. Me, I'm 27, man.
7.
Pretty old.
How have you been?
I've been good. I've been good. Kind of busy lately, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, overall pretty well, healthy. So
Got it. Yeah, I understand you're very busy, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. I really appreciate it. The time to talk.
yeah, of course,
Mm.
of course. Are you recording this?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. You good with
Okay,
that? All right.
for sure.
All right. So yeah, so I just want to start off how you doing this during this COVID time and how's work going for you?
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So work. Well, okay. So let me start off with um, just being and living in like these uncertain times. It's been it was I liked it in the beginning, the first couple of weeks, because with all the companies and workplaces and offices shutting down and allowing people to work remotely.
Mhm.
Um, I was pretty excited by that because my company is has been less flexible with working from home. So at first it was very exciting because kind of gained a sense of freedom. Um, but after a very short time, almost like 2 to 3 weeks after, it started getting tough mentally because you're kind of confined in your home. As you take precautions, you should, you know, not try to go out as much.
Mhm.
And so, you have to find ways. I had to find ways to kind of um, creatively just allow to be healthy mentally. Whether it's taking walks in the park nearby or um, kind of setting myself apart from my work. I think that was just finding ways, even no matter how small they might be, because mental health is huge, especially during these times. So
For sure. Yeah, I kind of relate as well. Definitely the first couple weeks for me, just really excited and happy. But later on, just after a month, just mentally just kind of off and just not used to it. So yeah, for sure. Yeah, I want to ask where were you from and where were you born?
where am I from?
Yeah, where were you born?
I was born in Los Angeles. Grew up in LA for the most part, and then I went to school in San Diego. And then so school was interesting. College uh, is what I'm referring to by school. I was an economics major, so I switched my major a lot in college,
Oh,
like maybe 6, 7 times, and it was always within the economics department. And so within the economics department, they had several different majors available. So it was like econ, just general econ. There was math econ, and then there was management science. And so I switched between the three once or twice, and then I switched to math computer science, which is within the math department.
mhm.
And then I didn't want to do math anymore because the math courses were pretty challenging. And that's when I switched entirely to computer science. So overall, I stayed 6 years in school because I switched my major so much, so often. Um, yeah, and so pretty atypical of the usual 4 years that people stay in school. But um, I think with engineering and just maybe in general, from what I hear, you know, beyond just the 4 years, it's becoming kind of like the norm. So, but that was pretty interesting. But yeah, for me, I stayed 6 years.
Got it.
And then I moved up to the Bay Area, which is where I'm currently at.
Mhm.
for work.
Right. How difficult was that for you? Like just trying to figure out like what you wanted to do and just keep like switching majors and trying to figure out what major you want to do. And especially like a lot of people can like relate to that as well, just like in college or just freshmen trying to figure out like what they want to major in and trying to figure out like what they want to do. So what are some like advice for you and like and your experience of just like trying to find what you want to do?
Yeah, yeah. I, you know, like I enjoy what I do. I'm a software engineer, so I code a lot, and I enjoy it as a day job, a 9 to 5 thing. But I think if I knew, so even right now, I wish if I could go back in time, I would be a doctor. I study pre-med.
Okay.
Um, and like, so it took me a while to really see what I like doing and had great interest and a passion for. And I think that honestly came from just taking a lot of courses, and that are outside of your major. And so taking a lot of general education requirements was pretty big. And like for computer science, for example, it wasn't until I took a course outside of my major department. It was like an intro to computing class, and that's I really enjoyed that class because we could. I found out that it was beyond just the theoretical concepts that I learned basically all within the econ classes I took, but it finally became taking the computer science class, my first one. I learned stuff that I could apply immediately after taking the course. So I thought that was very cool. Um, and like I was longing for that because I was learning all these things in my econ classes. And they're interesting, but I couldn't see a way how I could get a job after that I could apply these concepts to. So that was a big thing. With respect to medicine, that was also, I took a class on AIDS
Mhm.
and how it impacts society across the world. And that was like my favorite class that I've ever taken in my life. And that was when, I really, I almost changed to medicine, but at that point it was more of a practical thing where I was like, okay, it was my 5th year of school and I couldn't, I was hard capped. I had a limit on the number of classes I could take at that point because I stayed so long.
Okay.
And so I just couldn't change. But that's why I always say if I could go back in time and if I knowing what I know now, I would do medicine.
Got it. So
So yeah.
So would you say that's like one of the biggest like thing that you like kind of like regret in college and like would have done differently in going back?
Um, yeah, yeah. Maybe just taking uh, a more diverse set of classes in the beginning rather than the end
Oh,
is one thing I would do differently.
got
But overall, like I'm happy with where I'm at, what I do. Um, so
got it. And what would you say like from your experience at UC San Diego, what would you say is like the biggest thing that you learned from that experience and how have you grown from just the experience in college?
what experience are you
Just just
like
in general, just like in college, just like life, just as in terms of like any way, just you've grown as a person or just as a student, just from just learning and yeah, from the couple of years that you've been at UC San Diego.
hmm. um man, experiences.
Like, is there anything the big thing that kind of like you learned and took away from just your experience in college?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot for sure. I'm just trying to think of something. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think um, I would say one experience that I feel like I really grew in was, or that led me to grow um, as a person was kind of involving myself outside of the academia. Um, and so getting involved, because that's what college is about too, not just classes and preparing you for your future career, but there's a huge social aspect to it too.
Right.
Um, and so, for me, I was involved in like ministry.
Mhm.
And so I'm a Christian, grew up in the church, and church ministry was something that I just kind of organically involved myself in starting freshman year. And that's what, a couple other clubs and orgs. But I think that was the one, church ministry was the one thing I write, wrote out and stuck out with throughout the whole 6 years. That was the one constant. And that just really, the friends that I made, the people that I met, um, they really allowed for me and for them, just for each other, to really, whether it was the stresses of classes or exams, or any other thing personally that might be going on. Those are the people who really kind of allowed for me and for them, for each other, as I was saying, to get through those, what it seemed like difficult times back then. But looking back, they were kind of, you know, compared to now, as you get older, the things that of the past that you thought was hard, they're kind of smaller in retrospect. But yeah, just involving yourself, getting to know people of different backgrounds, different types of people. There's so many people all over the world. Like I never knew that I'd be friends with people like from across the world, because they're international students who study and want to study in the U.S. And
Sure.
so just different types of people you meet.
Got it. And you started as going to like more of your like work career as working at Apple, software engineer. You started as Apple like as an intern. Like, how did you hear about like the position?
Mhm.
How's the recruiting process for you like?
For me, there was no recruiting process.
Okay.
Yeah, for Apple in particular, but my school did have a career fair, so I did check that out because I was so confused and like lost with regards to where like how I was to look for a job
Mhm.
because what I learned, even though I said in the beginning that I liked what appealed to me about computer science was the fact that you could do things outside the class. But even then, a job, looking for a job, and applying for a job and getting a job was ended up being pretty different. And you have to study different material to get a job because that's what the interview process mostly entails. It consists of. So yeah, I think um, for my internship at least, I just literally just applied. I saw a post on my school career job site or whatever,
Okay.
and so I applied to that, and then I guess I had a previous internship that I got through someone at my church.
Okay.
So that was a referral slash connection. But that one was very like I wasn't doing too much. Um, it was more like the traditional uh, idea of an internship where like
Mhm.
the interns don't make meaningful impact and don't contribute to big projects and stuff. But that's still experience that that people look at and regard more than people with no internships or backgrounds. And so like my resume eventually got picked up by Apple and the team I was interviewing for. And so we set up like 2 interviews, I think. Um, I looked for like on Glassdoor is a good site, like where they have sample interview questions, and so I looked there, just wrote down answers, practiced, and it's literally I think engineering interviews
Mhm.
at tech companies will be mainly like trivia questions, like okay, how does this work, or like what happens if you do this, or it'll be like a brain, not a brain teaser, but a logic programming question where they'll give you like a question and you have to solve it using code. And so I cleared 2 phone interviews and I got the internship. And so once you have an internship, finding a job becomes easier, even though I had a difficult time coming like after graduation. But I just kept applying. Um, and then I honestly, I think I did the same thing with Apple. My current job is where I just kept applying online, and eventually they picked up my resume.
Got it.
So,
I realized that I
yeah.
was doing a lot of research on like people and like working at tech companies, stuff like that. I tend to like spend like only like maybe like 2 to 3, 4 years at tech companies. It's a pretty short amount of time and move to a different company and the next company. Just from your experience working at Apple and tech company, like what is your perspective?
Mhm.
Like, what do you think the reason that's pretty common for people working at tech companies?
That's a good question. I think one reason is there's so much in. Okay, so this I think what you're saying is definitely true of tech as a whole, but it's very a lot more specific and true for engineers.
Okay.
Um, and so I'll just speak from an engineering perspective. So for engineers, like a lot of people like to move because they're more enticing projects um, that cater to what they want to do in the future for their career. So, like, just take software engineering for example. Right now, the big thing is like machine learning and artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
and that's being adopted by a lot of tech companies across the world. And so, and people want to do those things. It's cool to write code that um, will have software make recommendations
Mhm.
for users, as opposed to just writing code that is a basic web app, for example. And so, if you're one of those people, right, who are, you're just writing a web application, um, you will want to, and you have aspirations to become a machine learning engineer, then you'll want to eventually switch jobs to accelerate your career path to becoming whatever you want to do within machine learning.
Mhm.
So that's one reason. Another thing is obviously money is pretty important for people for different reasons. Um, Within tech, there are always going to be companies that value your experience and will offer you more money. So that's a pretty quick and easy, pretty clear reason. Very simple. Like if you like money, um, and another place is offering you more, then they'll jump. You'll jump.
Got it.
Um, yeah, I think those are the two big motives off the top of my head. Um, yeah.
Nice. So I was wondering about like internships and like interning as a one company and later getting a job afterwards. It's like from your experience of just being an intern at Apple, then later getting a job after like your internship and as a software engineer for Apple, like what do you think like is like the biggest advice or tip on what like separates someone like from as an intern and later because like so many people intern but later that person getting that job afterwards.
Versus, wait, so what's the big difference between someone who interns versus someone who doesn't?
No, I mean like the people like as an intern like working for Apple, right? And later getting an
Mhm.
actual job afterwards. You know, many interns don't get a job. Like for example, working at interning for.
Okay. Yeah, returning full time.
So what do you think is like the
I,
biggest inspiration and biggest like thing that you saw in your experience of interning and getting a job afterwards?
yeah. Well, okay, so my case is different because I didn't intern with the same team that I am with right now. And at companies, they might value that, like, or it might work differently where like teams, they hire by teams versus they hire by companies overall in general. And Apple hires by teams, as opposed to, for example, like Google.
Mhm.
Google will hire, at least engineering wise, Google will hire, they'll interview you as a company first.
Mhm.
And then after, if they think you're good and you pass the interviews, then they'll put you and assign you to a team, or they'll do something where, they'll match you to a team depending on your preferences and your skills. Um, so my case was different. And so that I there are various reasons why the team might not bring you on back for full time from your internship experience. One is obviously you didn't do well,
Mhm.
and so they won't hire you. They'll rather look for somebody else because they've already used you as a test, and
Huh.
you have not passed that test. Another reason is they just don't have space on their team. So given the budget that they have as a team, and each team within the company will be allocated a budget for hiring.
Mhm.
Um, and they might not have that budget to hire someone out of college for the skills that they can offer. So there are different reasons why, but um, for me, it was a matter of team budgeting.
Mhm.
And so they referred me to different teams, but um, I think I did not pass those interviews, or I forget what happened. Um, but basically, when I applied back to Apple full time, it
Mhm.
was as if I was applying as a completely new, different candidate
Oh,
to
okay.
to that team. Yeah, because they hire by team. But they did. I'm pretty sure that they did give me that edge in a sense
Mhm.
because I've interned at Apple before. I know the culture. I know how the company operates, and that's a pretty big advantage that um, you know if you are applying back to the same company, then that an advantage that you'll have over other candidates who did not work at the company before.
Got it. I was wondering, what's like the work environment culture like at Apple?
The culture here is pretty. It's very fast moving. Um, they hire you because they think you're good and can contribute right away. Um, I think as a new graduate though, or being hired as a recent graduate of university, they do give they gave me uh, some time to ramp up to learn things. Overall, it's pretty fast moving. Uh, Another thing is the company is very secretive, and you can see that as a consumer, as a someone who buys Apple products. You can see that when like all you'll hear is rumors
Right.
as opposed to Apple releasing um, details of something they're working on before.
Mhm.
Um, and so you see that as someone outside of the company, it's a lot more um, that the the secretive nature and the policy within the company is a lot more strict.
Mhm.
Um, And so that's a huge part of the culture of the company. Is you collaborate very closely with the people you work with,
Mm.
but in a sense, collaboration is on a need be basis, and so you don't really talk to people or work with people that you don't have anything in common with respect to like work. So yeah, I'd say those are the big two elements of our culture.
Got it. So I mean, like in terms of like just like security wise and just like how secret they are, is there kind of like a protocol or like kind of procedure you have to go through like at work? There's a lot of like rules and like regulations you're gonna do.
I mean, like we can't go into buildings, just any building.
Uh,
Um, you know, I know other companies like you can go as an employee, you can go to most buildings. Like maybe sorry, I need some water. Um, Maybe like one or two
okay.
buildings might be on lockdown, meaning only privileged or like special employees can go in. But for Apple, it's like you can only go to your building, um, and that's because of the privacy issues.
Got it. I was working with thinking about like collaborating with people like as a software engineer. Like, do you mainly like just like code like all day? Like, what aspect and part of your day or your work in general like is part of collaborating with other people when you're working on the projects?
Yeah, it differs by your function and like what type of engineer, what type of software engineer you are. And also there are a lot of other factors like team and what company you're part of. Um, for myself, I do my day consists I'd say like almost half writing code and then the other half meetings and discussing ideas with my team, um, planning things with my team, going deeper into the details of the code with my team, maybe having to shoot some emails off. Um, so yeah, I'd say it's pretty half half.
Uh, are you able to share like just the genre or just like the field that you work for Apple?
Like, what do you mean by genre?
Just like not like into specific, but just like the type of work like you work on, like just like the field or like yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean by feel, but
Mhm.
I work.
Like in a
So the team I
department.
work under, yeah, the department I work under is the Maps team,
Oh, okay.
and so it's the the whole department, makes up the Maps app, or like what we do makes up the app,
Mhm.
and everything behind it. But yeah,
I was wondering, like what are some of your goals, your personal goals, and some things that you like to grow, as an employee at Apple and just as a like person as well, some aspirations,
yeah, yeah.
some of your dreams as well.
Say my goals would probably be, um, I think just to expand more in because I'm still, I'm only 2 years into my job out of college, and so there are a lot of things I can learn. So I say like I mentioned before about machine learning. Um, there's a lot of people, and I feel like I'm one of them who has an interest in machine learning. And so that's something that I'm keeping an eye on, and kind of maybe I'll start studying on the side um, in a couple of months or whenever I have the time. Um, but I say from very generally, my goal is to just do well, maybe move up the ladder,
Mhm.
um, depending on my situation in the future. Just like maybe go into management,
Mhm.
and that would be like okay, almost no coding, and just managing engineers.
Mhm.
But we'll see because that means that like no more coding, and there are a lot of people who go into that route,
Mhm.
um, go that route, and they miss coding, and so they go back. But it's harder to go back from management to engineering because
Okay.
you the longer you stay out of engineering, you just miss the details and you forget a lot of how the processes work, and you kind of almost forget how to code. Not like entirely because that's what you've been doing for your whole career, but you forget a lot of it, and so it's just hard to go back into that. Um, so yeah, they say like it's easier to go transition from engineering to management um, than it is from management to engineering.
Got it. And I
Yeah.
was wondering, what was just like the biggest challenge that you face and overcome, and like the biggest thing that you're learning from your work experience at Apple?
Biggest challenge, um, I'd say I don't know. Honestly, there aren't too many challenges. I think the company is great in that sense, and I haven't personally, at least, been overwhelmed by anything. Yeah, nothing too concrete for you for you
In terms of like
with
learning wise?
that.
Mhm.
Yeah, learning's been okay, but that's everywhere. Like it's
Right.
not company specific where you learn the code base, you learn, what your team does, but that's always a process for everybody.
Got it. And last question, as a Christian, what are some ways to implement your faith, through your work and in the work environment?
It's a great question, man. There are a bunch of ways, whether it's talking to your teammates, building those relationships with your coworkers. Um, but there are other ways too that I've discovered. And so like there's at bigger companies you'll have like small, kind of like college or high school, you have like clubs and orgs that you can join that cater to interests and your passions. And so at Apple there's a Christian org, and
Awesome.
so I've been a part of that, not too actively as of late, but um, that's a great way to meet other believers
Mhm.
and to invite your coworkers to those events.
Got
You
it.
know, so um, yeah, they also there's with the club they provide that accountability.
Mhm.
That like you're as much as you are plugged into a church, it can be hard at work, um, having the accountability around you.
Mhm.
And they provide that, which was really cool. Um, so yeah, just it differs by your situation, but for me, that's how it looks like. Just relationships, building relationships with coworkers, and just uh, going and seeing how Jesus opens doors
Mhm.
with them, as well as going out to these events with my fellow believers at the company.
Got it. Well,
Hmm.
that's the end of the interview. Thank you so much for taking time for interview, Kevin. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure talking with
Yeah,
you.
of course, man.
And great to catch
That's
up.
it.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Take care. All right. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too, James.
Bye.
All right. See you. Bye.